This is how jiu-jitsu saved my life. Back in September 2016, I was in a pretty dark place. I had just moved out to a place that I knew nothing about, to Oregon from the Midwest, and just had broken up with a girl a few months prior that was basically the love of my life. Very cliche type of thing. I ended up moving out west because I thought that what I wanted to do was be a big backcountry hunter. And that was really what I enmeshed my identity into. In September, though, in 2016, it was bow hunting season, and I went and I made a long trip to Eastern Oregon. I lived on the west side. I made this long trip to Eastern Oregon, and my whole idea was I was going to stay out there for several days. I was going to camp. I was going to have a good time hunting. And it was going to be for about a week. Well, I wrapped it up after day 2 because I wasn't mentally in it. It was harder than I thought. It was not the experience I thought it was going to be. I had everything built up in my head of what this was going to be. And I have a 5-6 hour drive back. And I'm just disappointed in myself. I didn't really have any friends in Oregon. I didn't have a girlfriend. The hobby that I thought that I was going to base my life around, I was terrible at. And I just didn't have any confidence. I was about 24 years old at that time, and I still was just struggling with who I was. On the drive home, I looked at my phone, and I saw that one of my friends from back home in Wisconsin had completed a long-distance bike ride from, I think it was Madison or Milwaukee to the Illinois border and back. And I looked at that ride, and I thought, there's no way I could have done that. But I looked at the guy, and I knew him, and he wasn't the most athletic guy from our high school. And he did it, and I'm thinking, man, I am a real bitch. I can't even do a week of hunting that I went and set out for. I don't have any friends here. I just, like I said, I didn't have any confidence. And so I called him and we were talking about it. And after that phone call, I just got extremely inspired by the story. And I was thinking, if he could do that, I can do something too. After I hung up that call with him, I remember thinking to myself, I always wanted to get into some kind of martial arts because I used to watch Rocky all the time as a younger kid, and it was some of my favorite movies. It was just so inspiring. But where I lived, there was none of that around. There were no gyms around. I lived in a very rural place. On that drive home, though, I remembered that there was a sign that I saw in my hometown talking about jiu-jitsu classes. The whole drive home, I'm thinking, maybe I should try this. I've always wanted to do something like that. I think this would be really fun. But of course, I was scared. I wasn't confident in myself to go do this. So I finally get home, and I remember calling the number on the sheet. It was September. It went to the head coach, the owner, John Goforth, and he answers the phone, and he's like, hey, what's up? Didn't know who I was, obviously. And I said, hey, I'm just trying to jiu-jitsu for the first time. What classes do you think would be the best? And he was super friendly. He was actually out bow hunting at the time, and he said, look, I'm not going to be in much this month, but I'm going to be having people covering for me because I'm going to be bow hunting. But yeah, you should come into X, Y, and Z class and try it out and see what you think. So I'm super nervous. I get one of my buddies that I'm living with, my roommate at the time, Marcus, to come in with me. And I remember going to my first ever class, and I think this is the hardest thing for somebody that's first starting jiu-jitsu is getting into that first class. And so I always recommend now telling people that you should bring a buddy, or if I'm trying to get somebody to go to jiu-jitsu, I'm trying to peer pressure them, I will always say, hey, I'll be your partner, just to take away that anxiety. But I brought my buddy with me. And I remember we get to the gym, and I don't know what we're doing. We're putting our stuff in our lockers or something. And Chris Pasto, who is one of the other coaches with John, comes up and gives a shit for something about doing something in the lockers in a funny way. And I thought, man, this guy's cool. I think that this could be a really good gym to train at, not knowing anything about it. So I go to that first class, and I can barely shrimp, and everybody's looking at you. You're the new person. Nobody really trusts you yet because they don't know if you're going to freak out on them. They don't even know if you're going to be there the next day. And I remember trying to learn how to shrimp, couldn't do it. And I remember sparring after class that night and just getting absolutely demolished by everybody and anybody that was there. But the really important thing that I learned and that I took away from those first few classes was, even though I was getting my butt kicked in there, I knew that I was doing something that most folks aren't even going to attempt to try and do. In other words, a lot of the people that didn't train at the time, at least I was getting more experience than them, just regular people that weren't training. And so I kept that mentality knowing that yeah, I'm not doing good right now, but if I keep with this, I can probably get to some sort of competency, I was hoping. And thus started my journey into jiujitsu. And I started training, I started feeling better, I started meeting people. And then there was one day in particular that I remember at this time, I was on antidepressants at the time because it just ran in my family. I loved my parents and they were amazing. They just always said, hey, this is something that runs in the family. This is what you do. You take this for anxiety. I didn't realize that I needed to get out of that myself. I ran out of them at one point, and I remember calling the doctor and trying to get a refill, and they said, oh, we can't get you in for X amount of weeks. It's going to be a bit to get this refill for whatever reason it was. And I said, okay. And so I scheduled this appointment. But during that time, I had listened to a Jocko podcast. And I remember a Jocko and Joe Rogan, it was a mix of them, I don't know. But the premise was essentially doing exercise and building this confidence so you don't have to rely on these exogenous sources for your depression and stuff. And I thought, that's interesting. And so I thought, what if maybe I can do this myself? And so what I started to do was train more, which training more because I kept getting my butt kicked made me want to get better outside of jiu-jitsu because I wanted any sort of advantage that I could get. And so what I did was I looked at, okay, how can I weightlift better? How can I eat better? How can I sleep better? What can I do? What can I cut out? What can I add to my life that'll make me better on the mat so I'm not getting my butt kicked? The weeks went by, I started eating healthier. I stopped drinking as much. I stopped going out as much. I started taking better supplements. And all this started to compound along with the exercise, along with meeting new people. Because again, I had moved from the Midwest to Oregon. I didn't know anybody besides my girlfriend that I was now not talking to or living with anymore because we broke up. And throughout the weeks, I started getting better and better. And so I ended up canceling that antidepressant appointment and I never have taken them since. So then started my process of training jiu-jitsu. And if you're somebody that does jiu-jitsu watching this, jiu-jitsu consumes your life, especially when you are in those first stages of starting. It's the only thing you think about. It's the only thing that you're doing. So I'm training my face off. I'm training 4 or 5 days a week. I remember I went a whole summer basically doing no outdoor adventures. If you know my channel, that's what I'm known for now. But I went a whole summer without doing any outdoor adventures. But then I started competing and jiu-jitsu basically became my life from 2016 to 2019. It really became my life for a good 3 years. Even into 2020, it really became my life. It became my identity. Now, some things happened during that time. Of course, I had various amounts of injuries. I sprained my MCL and LCL pretty bad. And I remember being super depressed at that time in 2017 because it became your identity. And once you couldn't train or feel like you could defend yourself, you felt really low. And then in 2020, I was going through another breakup. You can see the similarities between everything here. Went through another breakup and tore my bicep straight off the bone in an arm bar by not tapping soon enough. So had to have surgery on that. So I've had various amounts of injuries, but I've always kept coming back to jiu-jitsu because of some very specific things that I think jiu-jitsu gives you that you can't maybe get with other sports or other activities or other hobbies that you can do. And one of those things is that you find out how much better you can get at something if you just keep dedicating the time. There's nothing more valuable than remembering just how bad you would get your butt kicked at the start of jiu-jitsu to then years down the line to where now when you're rolling with somebody, it's like rolling with a toddler at some points. It's so easy. And especially an untrained individual, you can just play with them like they're a 4-year-old baby. But you can take that to other areas of your life. And I remember doing that specifically for whatever reason. We were roofing a house. I was helping it was our landlord roof a house, and he was teaching us how to do it. And I was always thinking, because I would work with my dad when I was younger doing construction like this, I'd always have in the back of my head that I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I always had this feeling that I wasn't doing stuff right, or I wasn't doing it the best way, or I didn't know how to do it. And I would look at some of the other folks that were on the job and I would think, man, I don't know how I'll never be able to get to that level of carpentry or construction. What I didn't realize at that time was just because they had so much time to learn all this stuff. And that's what jiu-jitsu really gave me, was you see how bad you are at the start, and then years down the line, you just are able to do things that you never thought was possible. And so you can extrapolate that to other areas of your life. And as I was saying before, I was roofing a house with the landlord, and I remember being terrible at it at first, but then thinking, man, yeah, I was so bad at jiu-jitsu at one point, but then I ended up being able to get dang good at it. And it was just because of the time and the competency and just learning. And I remember just taking it to that roofing job for whatever reason. And by the end of the next couple days, I was doing a good job. And so it just really inspired a lot of confidence into me that I'm not dumb. I can learn things. If I can learn how to not keep getting my butt kicked and actually become competent in this sport, I can do anything. That's the other thing that comes up with it is the confidence. If you're a regular at jiu-jitsu and then you don't train jiu-jitsu for a period of time, you feel a little bit deflated, a little bit lower, just a little bit lower confidence. But when you're training regularly, you feel absolutely great, like you could take on the world. And it's just crazy because the way that I felt a altercation might go down prior to jiu-jitsu and the way I think it would go down now after training jiu-jitsu for almost 10 years is completely different. And that's why when a lot of people come into jiu-jitsu, I think at first they don't know. And that's why there's two types of people when they start jiu-jitsu. They're either the people that are going to keep coming back because they got so humbled, or there's the people that got their butt kicked so bad that they're just going to put that into denial and never think about it again. Those are the two types of people that will end up going to their first jiu-jitsu class. And it's the people that are okay with getting their butt kicked for a long time that are going to be the ones that come back, and the ones that can get their ego destroyed and then start building it back up again. Those are the ones that are going to come back. But what I had always felt prior to jiu-jitsu is that, I would just do X, Y, and Z to somebody that I saw in a movie if I was ever in an altercation. And that's exactly not how it would go down at all, especially against a trained individual. So the confidence is just a huge thing, being able to walk around town and really not be afraid of really anybody. Jiu-jitsu is a great sport because it brings such an eclectic group of folks to train. You'll be training with real estate agents, lawyers, biologists, you name it, videographers. It's all across the board. And what's great about this is that it brings in fresh new perspectives into life. And what I've always said, because I've moved several times before. So at first I went to college in Minnesota, I moved to Oregon, and then I moved to Wyoming, and I'm from Wisconsin. And so I've moved multiple times. And what I always tell people is that you need to get plugged into the community in some way. And jiu-jitsu is a really good way to do that because you meet people in this very intimate fashion. Intimate seems like a weird word, but you are rolling with them. You're creating that oxytocin between individuals that you just don't get if you're just at work or if you're whatever. But the point is that you don't have to, but you have to join some type of community hobby, whether that's pickleball or whatever, that gets you around people, that gets you meeting people. Otherwise, you're never going to form these connections and these friendships, and you're going to have a really miserable time, especially if you do move. What I found though is that in forming these connections, especially if you are a freelancer, if you own your own business, you could also potentially form business connections. Just off of some of the things that I've done before, I've created videos for our gym, gotten paid. I've done real estate stuff. I've met a real estate girl there, so I did videos for them. I've been a real estate agent that hopefully will hook me up, maybe looking at some good deals in Cheyenne at some point. But the point is that you're going to be meeting this eclectic group of individuals, and it's going to expand your horizons. It's going to give you different connections, and connections really is a huge part of the success formula when you are in the real world, trying to get jobs, trying to form a business. Now, the interesting thing about jiu-jitsu is that even though I've had all these injuries, I've always wanted to come back because in my mind, I knew that I could always be a black belt. And one thing that my first ever coach, John Goforth, said was, hey, in 10 years, you're going to be whatever age, you might as well be a jiu-jitsu black belt. And that's always stuck with my head because you're going to age regardless. And yes, getting a jiu-jitsu black belt takes a long time, but you might as well do it because of all the benefits that I listed. In addition to a lot of this stuff, if you're in jiu-jitsu, one thing I would recommend too is bringing folks with you to train. I touched on this a little bit, but one of the most intimidating things is going out and going to class by yourself. There's two individuals that I can think of that I have peer pressured into going to jiu-jitsu. And both of these individuals I had to work on for months, just saying, hey, I think you should come. I think you'd really like it. I think you'd enjoy it. I think it would better your life, whatever. For months, even years it took. And then finally both of them went and this was in 2 different gyms and 2 different locations. One of them's a purple belt now, and one of them should be getting a blue belt. They both absolutely love it. That's one of the best things that I feel like I can do to give back to the community, getting people in to jiu-jitsu that otherwise wouldn't do it. In the end, what jiu-jitsu has gave to me has been the confidence to do and learn anything that I want, whether that's learning guitar, learning a new language, learning to edit a video. Jiu-jitsu has given me the confidence because I've seen where I've been to where I am now in this sport that was one of the hardest things that I've ever done to keep showing up and keep coming back to, that it proved to myself that I have the ability to learn and do something great. I quit drinking in December of 2019 because of a jiu-jitsu competition. This is the last time I actually competed. I'll be competing at the start of the year once I get on better insurance here. I stopped drinking for this tournament in 2019 in December, and I can't remember the exact date. Did the tournament, and I have not drank since. I mean, we're coming up on 6 years now of being completely sober, and that has changed my life. I don't think if you ever talk to somebody that's given up drinking and that they said that their life has gotten worse. I've definitely seen where my life trajectory has gotten better especially since jiu-jitsu. I was on this flat line. I hit jiu-jitsu and I started this life trajectory going upwards. And then especially once I stopped drinking, it started going even more. I continued my healthy eating habits. I feel amazing. I'm 33. I'm going to be 34. Some of the people that I look at and that I went to high school with look like they're in their mid 40s right now. And so I feel amazing. And I credit all of this to jiu-jitsu, because if I never found jiu-jitsu, I would never be at this place that I am right now. And that gives me the chills to say, but I would never have had a reason to do the things that I do, like eating healthy and having a purpose to work out, having the confidence. If it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, I would have never quit my job and started a business by myself, because I wouldn't have had the confidence. If it wasn't for jiu-jitsu, I would have never moved again and been in a place that I love. I would have never been making as much money as I am right now. And I would have never met the people that I am now really good friends with. If you're thinking about going to train jiu-jitsu, or if this resonated with you, leave a comment down below. If you're in jiu-jitsu, I'd love to hear how your experience was with jiu-jitsu, if it was similar. And if you're thinking about training jiu-jitsu, leave that in the comments below. So leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your experience with jiu-jitsu. Has your life gotten better? Has it gotten worse? Have jiu-jitsu? I doubt it's gotten worse unless you got significantly hurt. And if you're thinking about training jiu-jitsu, leave a comment down below too. Guys, if this resonated with you, hit the subscribe button. Thanks.